Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to look at feminist media research and think about how feminist media research has ingeniously connected the topic of how women use media with the question of social opportunity. Now, one of the things that motivated Angela McRobbie's approach to feminist media, and I've asked you to read Angela McRobbie for this particular topic, is that she noted a long history in media research of, if we go back to the 1970s and 1980s, this idea that media researchers didn't take women media users terribly seriously. And this, in Angela McRobbie's view, reflected the fact that society didn't take women media users terribly seriously because the society in which she began her career as an academic, which was Britain of the 1970s, didn't take women very seriously at all. And I suppose one of the questions you might be asking is, why are you reading a woman who begins writing about media research, women media users in the United Kingdom in the 1970s? And the answer is because her ideas travel, and that we can draw a lot of parallels between her ideas about how women's media use reflects their struggle to achieve equality with contemporary research on media users of things like mobile phones today. Let's start off with an example of the sort of problem that Angela McRobbie began to face as an academic. So, as I say, Angela McRobbie's research was motivated by the fact that she looked in the 1970s at the sort of media that teenage girls liked to use, which were teenage magazines and pop records and those sorts of things. And she noted that people didn't take those things terribly seriously. And when she dug a little bit more under the surface, she found that there was a lot of interesting things to say about how young women used media in particularly frivolous ways. And to justify the point that her ideas still work, we can think about the way that our society still kind of laughs at the way teenage girls use media. Here's an example from Australia.
Have you seen them? They're so hot and it's ridiculous. They are amazing. They seem like angels, and you just see them and you just want to cry all the time.
So there we see an example of the sort of teenage girl media user that society quite often laughs at. In what in earlier ages would have been called the teeny bopper, but the fan of the boy band. And of course, one of the interesting things that was reactions to One Direction's visit to Melbourne. And of course, you could argue that there'd been historical precedents that if you looked at pictures of groups like the Beatles in the 1960s and the Bay City Rollers in the 1970s and New Kids on the Block in the 1980s arriving in Australia, the haircuts would have changed, the dresses would have changed, but the essential behaviour would have been somewhat different. It would have been largely the same, except I think that one of the things that we might bear in mind is that the girls who showed up at the One Direction airport, and I've written about this in an article that you can check out here that talks about the importance of McRobbie's work, kind of knew that they were performing for a camera. And one of the things that's quite significant about McRobbie's work is she talked about why girls invested so energetically in these sorts of musical types. You know, the sort of boy band who's, from an external point of view, is I suppose fairly disposable. They all look the same. They all sound the same in terms of basic formats. But she said, well, it doesn't really matter, because the reason why girls invest so much in these sorts of bands is because they allow them a social outlet. They allow them to do things that quite often they're not allowed to do. To go and hang out at the airport with their friends in public spaces all night by themselves, away from their parents. So there's actually a kind of a cunning strategy behind this kind of what looks like hysteria to unknowing eyes. And quite often McRobbie argued that these strategies reflect the fact that most of the time teenage girls are highly restricted in terms of where they can go and what they can do. And being a fan of a boy band is a way of making sense of that, is a way of handling that social restriction. So behind the apparent hysteria, there's actually a cunning logic. And I suppose we'd also want to think about the fact that this is the beginning of, I suppose kind of one of the things that we might think about is how, if we're talking about how fans of teenage boy bands are laughed at, then in some ways this creates there's something of a career. We can talk about the way that that women, no matter their success, are still judged on their bodies and the way that they look in the media. And the way that this can kind of, so there's a sense of kind of the media creating a narrative where you have a career as a girl, no matter what you do or how well you do or how well whatever your accomplishments, you are still judged by your gender. This is very much a story which is told in the media. So we could talk, for example, about Julia Gillard, who comes from humble beginnings to become an incredibly gifted lawyer and the Prime Minister of Australia, and is still criticised for her body. Similarly, Kate Bush, who was anybody who knows anything about music, I'm not one of those people myself, but if I read my rock criticism, the British singer Kate Bush is pretty much recognised by every rock critic as an incredible talent, as an incredibly original artist who changed the face of music. And yet when she comes back to perform on stage in the early 21st century after a 20-year hiatus, all a lot of people talk about is the fact that she's gained weight, because time has passed and people gain weight. And there's actually a very interesting book about this by Ross Jennings and Abigail Gardner on the problems that women face when they age in the rock music industry. It's fine for the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger's pushing 80 and still having kids, and people say, well, good for you, man. And it's very different for women. So I suppose kind of what we're talking about is the idea that the way that young women use media kind of reflects the fact that they live in this social and media world where they're constantly judged by their gender, no matter what they can do. And so this is an example of how media use, this is an example of the sort of social context that some people try and handle through media use. So that's just a basic explanation of the relevance of a feminist approach to media research.